Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show, where we talk about all components of business and how to utilize them for exponential growth. My name is Athin Cassiotis. I'm a serial entrepreneur, international speaker, results strategist, business coach, mentor, and consultant. Today, I have an awesome guest. He's the CEO and founder of NextAfter, a fundraising research lab that has been listed as one of the top 500 fastest growing companies in the US. He works with charities, nonprofits, and NGOs to help them grow their resource capacity. He is a thought leader and the author of the book Optimize Your Fundraising, lead researcher and co-author of the Online Fundraising Scorecard, Why Should I Give It to You?, the Nonprofit Value Proposition Index Study, and the Midlevel Donor Crisis. He has trained organizations in fundraising optimization around the world and is a frequent speaker at international nonprofit conferences. He's also the co-founder and board member for the Human Coalition, a member of the board of directors for Open Doors USA, an advisory board member for the SMU Digital Accelerator, and an advisory board member for the Blackbaud Institute for Philanthropic Impact. Welcome, Tim Kachuriak, and thank you for being on my show.
Athin, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
You're very welcome, mate. It's so awesome to have you here. I'm sure there's going to be so much value for everyone watching and listening today. So you're a very successful entrepreneur. So for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us about you and your journey.
Well, sure. My journey, especially into the nonprofit space, was a very indirect one, which I think it is for many people that work in the space. But my story is I graduated from college right after the events of 9/11 here in the US, which was a horrible, horrible time to enter into the job force, especially for somebody that wanted to break into the field of advertising and marketing. But fortunately for me, I worked at a country club all during high school and college. So I like to joke I had 432 aunts and uncles that were captains of industry. And the guy who was the president of the country club was also the president of the second largest ad agency in Pittsburgh. So when I needed a job, I just went and called Uncle Joe, and I said, hey, can I come meet with you? And he said, absolutely. So I go and I do my dog pony show and, kind of show him all the things I could do. And he's like, I'd love to hire you, kid, but here's the deal. We just laid off 30 people yesterday. 9/11 hit our industry hard, our agency harder. I can't help you. And so that was my experience coming out of college, just getting doors slammed in my face for the first 6 months. Ended up meeting a serial entrepreneur, actually at a golf outing. And he's like, maybe you could do some projects for these little businesses that I operate. And I said, that sounds great. And then he looked at me and he said, you know what? Why didn't you start your own business? I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, I've got an incubator on the second floor of my office building. I'll introduce you to people and I'll be your partner. And, the rest is up to you, kid. And I was like, that sounds great. I mean, at the time I'm living in my parents' basement. I've got no overhead, no romantic interests. I've got nothing to lose. So I started this business called Ambience Marketing Services. We started off just doing anything marketing that paid money. I bought all this video equipment. We'd shoot TV commercials and make corporate videos and flyers for things. And then we kind of got into the digital space. I mean, this is back 2002. So it was still kind of, forming a bit, and ended up, doing this for about 5 years. Really loved it. Ended up linking up with a lot of the general market ad agencies, and we were their digital boutique that they would outsource work to. But about 5 years into it, I was like, you know what? I don't really like the clients that we serve. And not that they were bad, awful clients. We had a lot of automotive dealerships and legal firms, and nothing wrong with lawyers and car dealers, but it just didn't really spin my wheels. I was always more of a cause kind of guy, right? And so I had the opportunity to work with a nonprofit organization. And we did all the marketing materials for a capital campaign that they were raising money to build a new building. And I loved it. And it was once I got bit by that bug, I knew I couldn't go back and make car dealership websites. So that's what sent me on this path of moving into the nonprofit space. Ended up going to work for a nonprofit for a brief period of time, and came to discover that there's basically these marketing advertising agencies that work exclusively with nonprofits. So I went to work for one of those. I was there for about 2.5 years. We got acquired by another agency that did similar work. And during that time, I just became obsessed with trying to understand, how do we optimize giving, right? How do we really push past all the best practices and all the well-trodden roads of how this is done, and really use the customer, which is our donor, to help us evolve our understanding about what really works and what doesn't. And that's what kind of has led to NextAfter and really what we are today.
Yeah, awesome, mate. What an amazing story. I love hearing it from the start, you know, from the basements and everything else to where it is, because no one really understands, you know, all the things around the journey. So that's very cool. And I think, you know, from a key part in your journey, you know, on this nonprofit thing, which is awesome, is like when you co-founded Human Coalition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we also became a board member. So I guess, do you want to maybe delve into that a little bit more about, you know, the change there and what you achieved in that space as well?
Well, sure. I mean, it was really, I mean, it was just trying to solve a marketing problem, honestly. And, you know, starting a nonprofit organization, it's probably not that much unlike starting a business. And, you know, you kind of bootstrap it for a while and you start to kind of refine your story, refine your pitch and get better and better at telling it. And you get more and more connected to people that have the capacity to stroke that like transformational check that will actually, you know, really put you in business and you know, make it not just a hobby anymore. And, you know, through the course of telling that story over and over and over again, and, you know, getting connected to people, I found myself in the living room of a newly minted billionaire family. And they said, you know, what do you need? You know, like, what do you need to be able to make this thing like a fully staffed organization? I said, I need $3.2 million. And they said, okay, what if money were no object, right? Because for us, it's not. Like, you know, we have more money than we know what to do with, right? So like, you know, what would you do then? And so like, I had to go, they actually sent me back. It was an assignment. I had to go back to the drawing board and come up with like a plan that would, that was 10x what I was originally thinking. And for them, they just wanted to make sure that they weren't funding the absolute end of the vision, right? And it was something I had never experienced before, but like that was a great lesson for me, that like, we really have to dream bigger and think bigger than even just what we can currently see here today. So I went back to them and I kind of laid out that whole plan. They said, okay, that sounds great. Here's your $3.2 million. And we were off to the races. So that was probably the biggest lesson I took from that, is that experience is just really kind of expanding vision and thinking past really what we think our business is today.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. Love that, mate. Love that. So let's get into a bit more of the details like you were touching on before. So what are the reasons why people decide to give?
Yeah. Well, that's a question I've been really obsessed with for the last, I don't know, probably 15 years. If you think about it, like giving is a very irrational decision. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like if like aliens landed from outer space and we had to explain to them, okay, so I'm going to go give money and then someone or something over there is going to benefit and I'm going to get nothing out of it. They're like, doesn't compute, doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not rational. But you know what? Every single decision we make is not really based in rationality, right? But giving, especially because it and the thing I love about it is it takes us out of ourselves, right? Like, you know, most of our time we spend all of our, you know, treasure on like our own self-interest, right? The things that our wants, needs, and desires, all the things that we think will make us happy. And giving kind of like, it takes you out of that. You start to look at the needs of society or the injustices that we're seeing happen. And we look towards some of these other people's needs, wants, and desires. And I think that is like one of the greatest, I guess, you know, manifestations of humanness, right? And so I just want more and more people to experience that. So NextAfter has really been my vehicle to begin to explore that. And the way we explore that is really by doing research. And we do really two types of research. We do forensic research where we're looking at data across the nonprofit sector. We're trying to figure out like, you know, where are there opportunities to grow generosity. But the biggest area that we focus is in our testing lab. And what I believe, and I think that this is true not just for nonprofits, this is true for business, is that the internet has created the world's most greatest behavioral laboratory that's ever existed. Because for the very first time, we don't have to guess what people think or ask them their opinion. We can actually like create recipe version 1 and recipe version 2, and we can A/B test them. And so every single visitor to our website can basically enter into a clinical, you know, research study without them even knowing, which is kind of weird and scary, I guess, but it's cool, right? and that's how we actually go about trying to decode that. And honestly, if you ask me for an answer, Athin, I would say that there is not one single answer for why people give. People give for a variety of different reasons, and many of them are very, very personal. Some people give out of a sense of duty or responsibility, especially older generations, right? This is how they've been taught. This is the right thing to do. And so they give based out of that belief structure that exists inside of them. Some people give out as an extension of their identity. They're trying to say to the world, here's who I am. Here's what I'm passionate about. And this is how I want you to look at me, world, is based on these different causes that I give to. Some people give out a sense of guilt, right? They feel like that they have too much, or they don't deserve what they have, and they give out of this sensation of guilt. Some people give out a sense of belonging. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? So it's not just one reason, but all the reasons are valid, and all of them can be optimized, which is the cool thing.
Yeah, definitely, mate. What an answer. I love that. So powerful. And, contributing to something obviously does feel better when we can help other people in generally, right? And then if we can do it monetarily as well, that's really awesome. So, if we're getting a bit more into business, right? And, to really build and scale a business, you mentioned it before, you needed a certain amount of people, right, to make this happen. Like you can build the process and things, but really people is what does it. So I guess, why should I say, does humanity trump everything else in any business?
Well, I think because, especially in our business, I mean, it's a knowledge economy today, right? So like, for example, at NextAfter, and this is not true for every business, but certainly for NextAfter, and actually it is true for every business, right? Like the primary ingredient that fuels our growth is the capacity of the imagination of the people that work inside of our organization, right? And so, when I started, I started as a single shingle. I was all by myself, right? And that's a really lonely place to be. And, you've probably experienced that throughout, various different, endeavors that you've participated in. But like, for me, I watched my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur. So he owned his own business, probably for about 30 years. And he had a business partner, and his business partner was Uncle Gary to me. Right. And they were in each other's lives, and like, they would come over for picnics, and I got to know his family. And, it was just like, this, my dad had this partner that he was rolling through this journey with together. And I always thought that was actually really cool. So after the first year of being in business by myself, I said, I need an Uncle Gary, right? I need a partner that will go on this journey with me. And that's when I reached out to a former colleague of mine, Jeff Giddens. And I said, hey, I think I have enough to be able to pay your salary for a year, which is great. So, why don't you consider, jumping in and joining me? And so he did, and he became my first partner. I have a total of three partners now. Each of them contribute an essential ingredient to what makes NextAfter work today. So, the people thing is, I could talk a lot about our staff and everything too, but like that was probably the most meaningful thing, is realizing I didn't want to do this by myself anymore.
Yeah, I love that, mate. And it's another way for people to contribute, right, back to a business as well, being part of a machine that really makes a big difference. So that's really, really cool. And there's a lot of people out there that do fundraising, and maybe people that have done it a lot may think they're a fundraising expert, but is there really such a thing? So do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and this is probably true in a lot of different spaces. Is like there's a lot of gurus and these experts and trust me, I'm a doctor kind of like folks, and I was one of them, by the way. And like there's a dirty little secret that all of these experts won't tell you, is that deep down inside, we always don't know what the hell we're talking about, right? You know what I mean? Like we don't always know the answers to the question. We might have to project that we do because we're getting paid as a consultant to, deliver the answer. But I'm going to tell you from experience, at least in my personal experience, I don't know all the answers. And that created a tremendous amount of anxiety for me. And so when I discovered testing and experimentation and using the web as a laboratory, running A/B tests and multivariate tests, and allowing the donors, who are my customers, to tell me whether or not I'm right or I'm wrong, it was the most liberating experience I've ever had, right? I was like, this is amazing. I don't have to pretend to have all the answers anymore. But what I know for damn sure now is that I know how to go find the answers. And the way that we go find the answers is by turning to the true experts, who are the customers, the donors, the people that ultimately create value for the company, or in our case, the nonprofit organization. So that was the big aha moment for me, and I couldn't be happier now.
Love it, mate. Yes, so true. The interesting world of influence and certainty in business, but like you said, there's always someone we can find the answer from, being upfront. So I love that. Now, you talked a lot about research, right, and different ways that you do things. So when you're doing that, what are some of the most important things you've learned about human behavior from your research?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest meta finding isn't going to be that earth shattering, but it's this idea that people give to people. They don't give to websites. They don't give to email machines. They don't give to direct mail letters or events or anything like that. People give to people. And the more that we can actually humanize the communication experience, the more effective the communication will be. So let me give you a very practical example. And this might be very relevant for business people as well as nonprofit people. If you look at most nonprofit fundraising emails, so this is the thing where they're asking you to give money to support the cause. A lot of those emails are very highly designed. There's images, there's graphics, it's HTML everywhere, there's big clickable buttons. If you dig in and start to read the copy, the text, it sounds like it's written from a professional copywriter, because it usually in fact is. And the problem with that approach, which everyone does, by the way, is that when a potential donor sees that in their inbox, all they see is somebody trying to market to them. And what we know is that people don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with, right? Because people give to people. And so one of the tests that we've run it with dozens of organizations. We've done in different countries and different languages, getting rid of all the images, all the graphics, all the buttons, and sending a more plain text email, and even rewriting the email so it sounds like it's coming from one human to another human. When we've A/B tested that consistently, 200, 300, 500% increase in donation conversion when we take that approach. So that's one, clear way that you can take that principle of people give to people or people buy from people and apply it to your marketing.
Yeah, wow, what an increase there. And it shows the power of data and looking at what you're doing and making those decisions behind it. Love it, mate. So, the nonprofit space is a challenging sector for some people. So do you want to maybe share some of the biggest problems you see in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but like most of the places I've been around the world, this is kind of a consistent theme, and it's that nonprofits have to play on an unequal playing field, right? So especially here in the US, we have a lot of like watchdog organizations, and we have those watchdog organizations because there have been bad actors, like bad nonprofits that have tried to deceive and swindle people out of their money, and they're not really doing what they said they were going to do with it. So what these watchdog organizations do is they monitor how much the nonprofit spends on the program or the societal benefits component of what they do, and then how much they spend on administration and overhead and fundraising, right? Well, the problem with that is that it's measuring the wrong thing, right? It's measuring efficiency, not impact, right? So a nonprofit doesn't have profits, right? So we can't like measure profitability. Our profitability is the societal impact that we have through the organization and through the work that we do. But that's not what they measure. They measure how many cents out of a dollar goes to support the cause. And here's my argument that kind of turns that upside down. Let's say that we have two organizations, and they both do the same thing. They're solving cancer, right? Okay. One organization has $100 million annual budget. The other one has a $1 million annual budget. The $1 million annual budget has a 99% efficiency, which means 99 cents out of the dollar goes directly to support the research or whatever the work that they're doing. The $100 million organization has a 50% efficiency, right? Which means 50% of the dollars are going directly to solve cancer. Which one is doing a better job of trying to solve cancer? $50 million of impact or $999,000. So you know what I mean? So it kind of And look, I understand that like we want to honor donor intent and people, but people also have to understand that like we don't hold businesses to the same standards. Nobody's telling like Amazon or Google how much they should spend on marketing. They're making those decisions based on how they want to grow their business. And even like the profits. I mean, most of these like, super high priced stock, publicly traded companies don't even make a profit, right? They're actually more nonprofit than our nonprofits. And the reason why is because they're investing in growth. And that's what we have to do as a sector. We have to invest in, constantly growing and getting more and more people to invest in having a larger corpus to be able to invest in solving the problem. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is like, honestly, nonprofit, because of those ratios and how much money we have to spend, we can't hire the best and the brightest talent, right? And the argument that Dan Plata makes, I'll just borrow it. It's really great. But he says, look, I'm a Harvard MBA or whatever. I come out of school and I can go make $400,000, right? Going to work for some consulting firm, right? Or I can make, $92,000 working as the executive director of some nonprofit organization. The logical person will say, you know what? I'll go take the $400K. I'll donate $100,000 and I'm still $300,000 ahead, right? And so that's one of the challenges we have is it's really hard to acquire and retain, significant talent in the space because people think that because you're doing work that's good for society, you shouldn't get paid a lot of money. And I think that that's not true.
Yeah, awesome points there, mate. I love that. And you touched on a bit about like the for-profit businesses, right? The correlation there. And I'd like to delve into that a little bit more because you've obviously done a lot of testing and research there. So what are some insights that, have implications and things for, consumer brands? We're talking bigger businesses or for-profit businesses as well.
Yeah. Well, honestly, a lot of the stuff that we found that have worked for our nonprofit clients comes from you all in the for-profit space. So the biggest thing that we've learned that is the key to all of marketing, and this is, I think, where this has tremendous benefit for any sort of business. It's something I obsess about and think about all the time, even at NextAfter, which is a for-profit company, by the way. But what is your unique value proposition? This is a question that a lot of people, first of all, don't understand what a value proposition is. And then secondly, they don't know how to articulate what their value proposition is. And the value proposition is not your mission statement. It's not what you do, right? It's not the products you sell. It's not the services you provide. What your value proposition is the answer to a very fundamental question that every single customer, or in my case, donor, needs to hear the answer to, but they're never going to verbalize it. And the question is this: if I am your ideal customer or donor, why should I give to you or buy from you rather than one of your competitors, or rather than giving to another organization, right? Or not at all. I mean, that's basically, the option. And the problem that most people struggle with is that they try to answer that question for their customer. It doesn't work that way, right? A value proposition is not something you can declare. You can't just put a flag on the ground and say, here's our value proposition. It's something that has to be discovered because it lives inside the hearts and the minds of your customers, right? And so that is why experimentation and testing and a lot of the research and things that we do is really centered on trying to figure out what is it that people value about what we provide to the marketplace. And that's something that, again, is only going to come from, paying attention and listening to and obsessing and studying your customer. By the way, this is not like new insider knowledge, by the way. Like, Peter Drucker talked about this. He's like, the sole purpose of any sort of business is to create a customer, or sole purpose of any sort of nonprofit is to create a donor, right? And so like we need to obsess about our customers and really put them in a position where they can lead us to understanding how to get more of them, right?
Yeah, so awesome, so true, so simple yet so powerful. Now, you're a board member in many businesses, right? Which I've said in the start. And so I want to understand, how did that come about? And, what benefits are there as well from being a board member?
Well, I'm a board member for nonprofit organizations. So the benefit is that I get to serve these organizations. But there's no compensation. So at least monetarily, it's a giving exercise more than it is a receiving. But it's really awesome to be part of these organizations and help to shape, how they think about, again, these things that are very near and dear to my heart, which is how do you take your message to the market? How do you get more people to say yes? How do you get your value proposition aligned with a certain audience set that's going to ultimately help the organization to grow? So how I got involved in boards, I guess the first one is because I started the organization. So, that's one way to get on a board. The second came through one of my, he was my customer for a very long time. And we formed a very close relationship. When I started my business, he was kind of a silent partner, and he helped to connect me to different organizations I could do consulting with, and even partnered with me on some of that to add credibility. I mean, when you're new in business, like paying for credibility is like the smartest thing you could ever possibly do, or borrowing it from someone else is the smartest thing you could possibly do, because you don't have a portfolio, you don't have a body of work to point to. I mean, maybe you do from your old job, but like people are kind of looking at you saying like, are you really, legit? So he connected me. He was the chairman for one of the boards that I serve on, and he thought that I would be able to bring some value to that process. And then the others, honestly, like I don't even know, like where SMU found me, like maybe just internet, and once you start to develop your reputation. But it's cool. I've learned a lot, honestly. Like I didn't know how to behave on boards, and I've learned a lot about like Robert's rules or whatever, and all the all in favor say aye kind of stuff, which is all right. But it was really cool just to learn from these other people that, were probably ahead of me in terms of their careers and their, their professions, and just learn how to be a, more savvy leader. So it's a great experience. I'd encourage anyone to try to get involved on any sort of board, whether nonprofit or for-profit, obviously.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Very, very cool. So you're also a frequent speaker at international nonprofit conferences. So what tips can you give us to be a great speaker?
Wow. Well, first of all, know your subject matter is probably a good place to start. And when I say know it, not just know it as a way of trying to self-promote and pitch yourself to other organizations, but like really know it in a way that you can be a teacher. I think some of like the best speakers are really, really, really effective teachers, because honestly, like that's what people are in the audience for in the first place. They're there to learn. And the more that you can kind of like understand your craft and be able to explain things and go off script, like some of the best parts of any sort of speech, I think it's like when people kind of like take their eyeglasses off and they go off script, and like it's always like the best. That's the part where I usually lean in. And then I guess the second thing, it's probably related to being a good teacher. It's just focus on the audience and what they get out of the presentation, not on what you get out of the presentation. Honestly, that has been my secret in business. Like, is just figuring out, like everybody begins every sort of relationship, right? Whether that's a personal relationship or a business relationship, or, like a prospect and a company, like everyone begins from the standpoint of looking at what's in it for me, right? And we kind of fixate on that, and it blinds us to the real common ground that we can establish by focusing on what's in it for our partner. So the same is true in speaking, like just trying to figure out and like understand and survey and interview and talk to the people where you're going to speak about what the audience are, who the audience is and what they care about, and then crafting the message to deliver the maximum amount of value. Hold nothing back. That's the other thing, right? Is like, don't just kind of give them like the couple little things that might lead them to want to have to call you for more. You know what I mean? Give them everything. Give them your very best stuff. And in my experience, those are the kind of talks that like, have people lined up to come talk to you after the conference, because they're like, man, you've given me so much value. Most people hold back. You held nothing back. How do I work with you? So that would be, that's some pretty good advice, right?
Yeah, that's some awesome advice. Definitely. I love over delivering. It's always what it's all about. And very cool there. Cause I'm sure I'm obviously doing more speaking, and I'm sure a lot of other people to get their voice out there, right? To connect to more people will do that as well. So thank you. So let's just talk a little bit. You have a lot of marketing background, right? So, and you've touched on different areas here. If we could simplify something for businesses now, maybe what are some simple ways or something that we can get better results with our marketing?
Okay, I call it the perpetual motion machine. So this is honestly, this is the growth engine that's led NextAfter from 0 in revenue to $21 million this year in less than 10 years. So like this, and like no investor capital, this is all organic growth. And the way that we did that is through this thing I call the perpetual marketing motion machine, or perpetual motion marketing machine. Something like that. Those 4 words together in some fashion. But basically, if you think about like, if you've ever seen a perpetual motion machine or Da Vinci's, kind of rendering of that, it's like this, like kind of spindle type of thing that's circles and moves. In the center is like this hub. And then out from the hub are like these spokes, and along these spokes, there's like these marbles that roll down, right? And so like the idea is like the weight of the marble rolls down, and then, there's constantly marbles rolling down, which is propelling this thing in constant motion. So once you set it in motion, it never stops. That's the idea. It doesn't really exist, but it's a cool concept, a cool thought experiment. So if you picture something like that, every single business that's in business, in the very center, in that hub, you are creating value. I mean, if you're not creating value, you're not in business, or you won't be in business for long, right? So you have to create value. So every business does that. That's in business. And because you are creating value as a business, you're accumulating knowledge, right? And most of us, our instinct is to hold all of our knowledge very close to our vest, right? Like we try to hold on to our knowledge. It's our proprietary knowledge. It's our secret sauce. It's our competitive advantage, whatever that is, we hold on to it too tightly. Well, and this is related to kind of my last point, but like when you let go of that knowledge, right? When you actually put that out into the marketplace in the form of content, right? And when I say knowledge, I'm saying like, this is not like your brochureware. This is like your very best stuff. When you release that into the marketplace, it attracts people that want that knowledge because it helps them in some way. And then that they become more customers that create more value, that creates more knowledge, that creates more content, that creates more knowledge, it creates more content, creates more customers. You see what I mean? So like this model continues to spin and spin and spin and spin. So if there's an area that I would encourage every single business owner that's on this podcast to go and invest in and investigate and pour resources into, it'd be content marketing. Take the knowledge that you're developing as a business and turn it into something that would be usable to deliver like automatic value to your ideal target audience. And don't be afraid to give away your best stuff. Because honestly, like if you want to create an innovative culture, go give away your best stuff today. It'll put positive pressure on your company to create something new and better tomorrow, because your competition has it now, right? You release it into the marketplace and that's old hat. But what it's signaling to the marketplace is that you are the true subject matter expert. You are the true market leader because you're delivering the most value. So that would be something I would just encourage everybody that's listening to participate in.
Yeah, love that. Very powerful, and yeah, giving away our best stuff. Awesome, mate. So as we're wrapping up here today, it's been an awesome show, and you've provided huge amounts of value. I guess, what one key piece of advice would you give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Stay curious, right? So like the biggest thing in my journey is just this constant, like insatiable curiosity about like what's going to happen next, right? And what that does is it causes you to go down some of these like dark alleys that you didn't think you would go down. And sometimes you discover there's a cool speakeasy down there and it leads up to, the entrance to Mr. Wong's, right? And as I told you about my story in Sydney, but what I mean is like, if you're constantly going and staying curious about your own business, right? I think that there's a tendency to kind of like feel like you've arrived, and it's like, it's old hat. It's just going to continue to work over and over and over again. But that's when businesses start to go down that, that very dark path of decline. And you have to reinvent yourself. You have to reinvent the value that you deliver to the marketplace. And that's not going to happen unless you as a leader stay curious and constantly, be exploring new things.
So we connected through our networks where I learned about your awesome journey from being a board member at multiple companies to now being the CEO and founder of NextAfter, where you work with charities, nonprofits, and NGOs to help them grow their resource capacity. You're an awesome guy, and I'm sure you'll continue to help cause-driven businesses and nonprofit organizations to better understand their customers and inspire their donors to give generously. I'm very grateful that we connected. I look forward to working with you in the future. So Tim, how can people find you, get in contact with you?
Well, if you can figure out how to spell Kachuriak, which is a chore, you can find me on LinkedIn. But probably the easiest way is just to go to nextafter.com. You can find all of our resources and all of our research is there. We've open sourced our whole catalog of all that stuff, so that's all available for free, and you can go check it out and get in contact with me there.
Awesome. Definitely go check out Tim and NextAfter. It's an amazing business of what he does and so knowledgeable today. It's so been amazing. So thank you everyone for watching and listening to this show where we talk about everything on business growth. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube as Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. I completely agree with you, or do I? The only way you'll know is if you tune in next time. So until next time, remember that our business grows when we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So remember to design your growth and results.